I had to start again, just my children and my wife. Thank my lucky stars to be living here today. 'Cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American. Good morning, good morning. See a couple of people tuning in already, so thank you for joining me this morning. Good morning, good morning. All right. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Just want to share a few things this AM, so thank you all for joining me. Just a few things I'll be sharing that concerns me. So good morning, Myra. Glad you joined. Good morning, Tracia. Good morning. All right. Feel free to let me know where you're watching from, too. I see a couple of you joining in here, so thank you this morning. I'll be discussing that topic that I have there, attack on America's democracy and our great republic. I'll talk about as much as I can this morning. Try not to keep you too long, so it may be another part to this. So good morning, Lisa, Rex, Jay, I see you. Dave, good morning. All right. Have some great Americans, some great Texans here. Jay, Lisa, thank you all for joining. Amen, amen. Thank you. All right. Looks like I have Michael here, so thank you for joining. We'll get started here in just a moment. Allow a couple more people to come on board. I hadn't gone live in a while, so thank you all for tuning in. Again, I'll be sharing just a few points with you all this morning, and we'll move forward. So Pamela Wright, God bless you. Rosalind Taylor, thank you for joining. All right, good morning. Gloria, Patricia. All right, thank you all for joining. Good morning, Patricia. Good morning. All right. Thank you all for joining. So I'll get started here in just a moment. So God bless you all. Thank you once again for tuning in here this AM to just hear what I have to say about this topic. As you see in the topic, we have assault on America's democracy. And so I want to share about that this morning. One thing I will let you all know, for those that don't know, I've run for office more than one occasion. So I know what it's like on both sides. I know what it's like on the political side. I know what it's like to have a taste of victory, but I also know what it's like to come up short. In any case, I will be as transparent as possible. During those times, good morning, Gloria. During those times where I came up short, my opponent would easily tell you that I reached out to my opponent. I've been a Republican, he'd been a Democrat. I've always reached out to congratulate him on his victory. As far as I'm concerned, that's just how I was raised. If you win, you win. If you don't, you don't. You move on. Yet, when it comes down to what I've seen here lately with elections, it's greatly concerning. And I will tell you as well, what I'll discuss with you is not anything, quote unquote, new as far as the idea of our democracy, America's democracy, and particularly our great republic being under attack. It's been going on for quite a while. So we're starting to see some things resurface. And I would be remiss not to say anything as a person that loves to speak on behalf of those who don't tend to have a voice to speak. And so what I will point out that was greatly concerning, as I was speaking with my youngest son, I was talking to him about the things that happened during this election cycle. We see that the U.S. Constitution is under attack. The U.S. Constitution is under attack. It's been taking place for a while, but it's at a greater level lately. We know that it's under attack when we can see violations of the Constitution take place blatantly and nothing being done about it. There were several states that were in question when it comes down to voting irregularities and things like that. but there were a few states that were highlighted as extremely bothersome with the things that took place. What we see, and again, I'm just going to simply tell you some things that I have saw and researched to be factual. If you ever, as I speak to you in this segment or any other segment, if you can ever find anything that I'm telling you to be untrue, then please feel free to provide me with details of your truth and give me a good reference of where you get that information from. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit that I'm wrong. Otherwise, I will continue to share what I share. And so one of the things that caught my eye was that we had a few major states. These states were pivotal: Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona, to name a few. We had these states that violated the U.S. Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. And this section of the Constitution lets the state legislatures alone make election law. So this is going to be important. So imagine for just a moment, if you have these states that, as the Constitution say, they're the only ones, these state legislatures are the only ones that can make election law. Yet we had, again, Pennsylvania, just to name a few, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona. We had each of these states that were making election law changes or changes to the election systems. And again, this was being done by, in many cases, public officials and not the state legislatures, which meant that there was automatic violations of Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution. This alone represented about 73 electoral college votes, which again, if you know the vote count, this would have shifted the election from Biden to Trump clearly. And again, I just need you all to understand, this is not so much a defense, and please hear this clearly. It's not a defense of President Trump, of whom I will tell you in transparency, I do support. And this is not an indictment on Biden, but more importantly, this is a defense of our Constitution. This is a defense of our freedoms. This is something that should greatly concern you as an American citizen, whether you are Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, Green Party. You should be greatly concerned. We're on worse than a slippery slope right now. If we have the U.S. Constitution, which is foundational to who we are as Americans, as well as our biblical principles, those things are foundational. If we can have the U.S. Constitution being trampled on, being violated, and we have the courts such as the Supreme Court, which refuse to act, more than likely fearing political accusations, if we don't have the courts to bring a redress to, then we have a problem. If we can't uphold our Constitution, then we have a problem, because in time, America will be completely destroyed if we do not uphold our Constitution. And again, I will tell you firsthand, as someone who's run for U.S. Congress, I do not mind congratulating the victor. I've done it in the past. If I'm beat and I've lost, then no problem. But what I will do is tell you when I think something is wrong, something is wrong. I want to talk to you about numbers. As a PhD, one of the things I learned quickly is that if you don't have statistical data, to back up what you're saying, then you're wasting some time. I don't want to waste your time this morning. I want to talk to you all about some implausibilities, and I want to talk to you all by just sharing some data. Again, to make it extremely clear, my greatest concern is the attack on the American system when it comes down to our Constitution, when it comes down to our great republic. These are things that concerns me. And I will reiterate periodically, if you find anything that I'm saying to be incorrect, then I challenge you to provide me proof that it's incorrect with a verifiable source, a reasonable source, not some opinion source. And so with that being said, here are the implausibilities that I ran across through just reading and just some basic research. On the night of November 3rd, and again, I'm just going off data that's available. Feel free to challenge it. On the night of November 3rd, President Trump led Biden by approximately 100,000 votes in Wisconsin, 300,000 votes in Michigan, 300,000 votes in Georgia, 700,000 votes in Pennsylvania. Then suddenly all four of these states, as has been reported, they suspended their vote count almost simultaneously. Now, keep in mind, again, I don't care what party you're a part of. If you are an American citizen, this should alarm you. Because if it happens now, it's going to happen sometime again in the future. This should alarm you. It's a destruction of who we are, the fabric of the United States, the fabric of our Constitution. This should alarm you. So we have President Trump leading by all of these votes, and the vote count is suspended almost simultaneously. By early morning hours the following day, Wisconsin flips for Biden, going from 100,000 votes in Trump's favor to flipping for Biden by morning. Same thing with Michigan. And a few days later, Georgia and Pennsylvania. Now, it is what it is. I know many people will watch this that may be Democrat and will look and say, oh, they're crying wolf. Leave it alone. The election's over. Yeah, maybe it is, maybe it ain't. But my point is, and I will reiterate this, when we look at our Constitution, when we look at these implausibilities, when we look at irregularities, when we look at the data, we should be greatly concerned that something is wrong. If we don't address this and if we don't take it serious enough, then what does our vote matter at this point? If things can happen like this. I want to go more specific. Now, for all those that may be wondering, okay, is this guy just throwing things out because his party didn't win? No, that's not my greatest concern. My greatest concern is never about my party winning. My greatest concern is that were things done the right way, proper, in order, and decent? Were things done in a way that our Constitution is still upheld? Our constitutional principles are still upheld. Because at the end of the day, this Constitution should outlive me. But if this Constitution finds its destruction while I'm living and I remain silent, then I'm just as responsible. So when we think about particulars, and again, as a PhD, one that loves to look at the data, when I saw this data to quantify a problem, this is what greatly concerned me. Please don't miss this. There were 8,954 vote updates used in this analysis that I'm going to share with you. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is almost 9,000 vote updates that this analysis that I'm going to share with you used. I'm not talking 54 or 100 or 200, almost 9,000 vote update analysis were used. When viewing almost 9,000 vote updates, there were just four, that stood out as decisive updates. These were what's called an anomaly in the entire data set. For those that may or may not understand what's taking place, the first, second, fourth, and seventh of these updates, there was a pattern. You can develop a pattern. You'll be able to see a pattern. And so in this pattern, the first, second, fourth, and seventh updates did not follow the observed pattern. In other words, the shift that took place in the wee hours of the morning, these were outliers of outliers. Meaning, if you look at a pattern of data, you'll see certain things taking place, and every now and then something will be off the charts, and that's different from all the rest of the pattern. That's an outlier. However, these patterns were outliers of the outliers. Give you the four updates in question. The 4 updates in question. And again, people are going to debate this one way or the other. I'm just simply giving you the information that I'm sharing with you based on what I've found and what I've seen and been able to research and see and find for myself. An update in Michigan. Keep in mind now, with the 4 states in particular, you had a suspension of the vote count simultaneously. So all of a sudden now we find that with updates in Michigan at 6:31 in the morning. And understand, Michigan, Trump was up by 300,000 votes. Now by 6:31 a.m. on November 4th, there are 141,258 votes cast for Joe Biden and only 59,000 for Donald Trump. Wisconsin updated at 3:42 a.m. with 143,379 votes for Joe Biden, just 25,163 for Donald Trump. Georgia updated at 1:34 a.m., 136,155 votes for Biden, just 29,115 for Donald Trump. Michigan updated with 54, this is at 3:50 a.m., 54,487 additional votes for Biden, just 4,718 for Donald Trump. The point is that the margin of victory in these 3 states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia, the margin of victory in these 3 states represented 42 electoral votes. That means that if this grand shift that goes against anything that's plausible, if this grand shift, which it does go against anything that's plausible, does not take place in the wee hours of the morning, then Biden is at 264 electoral votes and Trump is at 274 electoral votes and he wins. Now, I know some are looking saying, well, that's whatever, but there's more statistical patterns that when you understand and you like stats, you'll start to say, well, there's definitely something wrong. There's still some doubters. There's still some that's crying, saying, okay, they're crying wolf. But hey, be it as it may, the numbers are what they are. And we are seeing something that's going against the grain. Outliers of outliers. Think about this for a moment. Here's a statistical pattern for you. In 168 years, since 1852, any person that's won Florida, Ohio, and Iowa, these are presidential candidates. If you win Florida, Ohio, and Iowa since 1852, there's only been one person that was running for re-election to lose that re-election, and that was Richard Nixon in 1860. And they believed then that that was because of election fraud. I want to make this clear. In 168 years outside of Richard Nixon and the situation which they believe was election fraud that took place, Trump is the only one statistically that they said in 168 years win all 3 of those states and still don't win the election. Here's the thing, even other Midwestern states, such as Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, here's the thing, statistically again, they always swing in the direction of Ohio and Iowa. Yet Biden won Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And they say the reason is he had a miraculous swing of an avalanche of votes in democratically held cities, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee. Is it possible? It's possible. But herein lies another issue. Trump's support from Black voters grew by 50%, while Biden's dropped below 90%. This is unusual. And again, statistically, an anomaly. This is another anomaly for you. Now, again, just use common sense. You can argue against anything I say. That's fine. Feel free to give me some proof on it. But I will tell you this. Biden won. This is what the stats say. Biden won more votes nationally than any presidential candidate in history. He won more votes nationally than any presidential candidate in history. Yet he had a record low. Understand this. He gets more votes than any other presidential candidate in history, yet he has a record low of 17% of the counties that he won. This is in comparison to President Obama. President Obama won 873 counties in 2008. Biden only won 524 counties in 2020, yet he had more votes nationally than any candidate, presidential candidate in history. Had no coattail wins up until last night. You can count those in Georgia if they want to say that's complete. But there was a red wave in the House, which is, again, this is an anomaly. A red wave in the House where Republicans gained a large number of seats and they won all. Understand this, they won all 27 toss-up contests. They won them all. Now, if Biden is winning and he's going down and he's winning like they say he's won, then you would have some of these toss-ups, again, statistically, going the other way. But Republicans won them. Republicans didn't lose not one single state legislature, and they actually made gains at the state level. Again, this is not anything that goes with the trend. Well, I want to give you something else. For those that are still saying, well, I don't buy all of that. You don't have to buy it. My point, again, it's not anything that is pointed towards one party or another just to boost up one party or another. My greatest concern is our U.S. Constitution, our voting integrity, our laws, our future, and our children's future. That's my greatest concern. That if we do not bring and hold to account any wrongdoing and people that are conducting wrongdoing, then who are we as a nation? And it's only a matter of time before our nation is destroyed. It's only a matter of time before people begin to realize, because we've heard it said before, my vote doesn't count. I don't vote. People say, I don't vote because my vote doesn't count anyway. Well, the way some of these things are looking, many of these people's arguments, they're going to find that they have some validity to them if we can't fix what we see as wrong. I will point out, this is what really caught my eye and attention. Even if you say, well, I don't buy all that other information, I want to talk to you about non-polling metrics. Non-polling metrics. We know that people are polled. Polling data is taken all the time to find out who's winning. People are being polled all the time. Who's winning this election? Who's winning in this county? Who's winning in this district? Who's winning in this state? This information is shared all the time, but what I'm about to share with you now, it knocked my socks off. It left me in a wow moment, what I'm about to share with you. Now, non-polling metrics. Non-polling metrics consist of party registration trends, consist of the candidate's respective primary votes. How many votes did the candidate get during the primary? Non-polling metrics consist of candidate enthusiasm, social media followings, broadcast and digital media ratings, online searches, the number of donors that a person has, and particularly small donors. And the number of donors will kind of give an indication as to who are the people betting on? So when we look at the non-polling metrics, we're going to do a comparison. The comparison is between the non-polling metrics and the media academic polls. Most people are familiar with the media academic polls because they put them in your face all the time. This is the academic poll. This is the media poll. This is what's taking place. Well, with the media and academic polls, they're pretty impressive. They usually call the elections with an 80% accuracy. 80% is pretty good. It's not great, and it can cause a problem because the other 20% of the time, they're wrong. We've seen that happen in modern times. We've seen it happen. They're wrong. But with the media and academic polls, they have an impressive 80% record of predicting the winner during the modern era versus the non-polling metrics. Guess what their rate of prediction is with accuracy? 100%. Did you hear me? When it comes down to a comparison between the media and academic polls, which is at a reasonable 80% of predicting an election, non-metric pollings are 100% correct thus far. They've never been wrong. They've never been wrong. So every non-polling metric forecasted Trump's reelection. Did you hear me? Every non-polling metric forecasted Trump's reelection, which means that if they had a 100% record of predicting the winner, there was no reason that they would be wrong this time. In order for Trump to lose, two things had to take place, two major things. One major thing had to take place. The mainstream polls needed to be correct, which they were not. They were wrong. Another thing that needed to happen, and keep in mind, historically, non-polling metrics have had a 100% accuracy rate on predicting the elections. 100%. So in this case, for Trump to lose, every single non-polling metric had to be wrong for the first time ever. And they all had to be wrong at the same time. You know, for that to happen, you may as well just go out and grab yourself a lotto ticket. If you play lotto, for this to happen, it's like you're going to play the lotto and you win twice in the same day in multiple states. I'll say this again. Again, we're just looking at information that's provided to us. We're looking at numbers. Non-polling metrics includes party registration trends, the candidates' respective primary votes, candidates' enthusiasm, social media followings, broadcast and digital media ratings, online searches, the number of donors that a person has, which kind of tells who they're hedging their bets on, and particularly with small donors. For Trump to lose again, statistically, the non-polling data is 100% correct, 100% of the time. But for him to lose, every single non-polling metric had to be wrong for the first time ever, all at the same time. Is it impossible? It's not impossible. Is it highly unlikely? Yes. Statistically, highly unlikely. But it happened. What do we have here? We have a situation whereby, again, our democracy as America, our American democracy, and more importantly, our great republic is under attack. Our great republic is under attack. I'm concerned for the first time in my life. I'm greatly concerned about the future. I'm greatly concerned, and here's why. Yesterday was the first time that I ever spoke to any of my children and said, I'm concerned about my vote. Again, I will stress to you, I have friends that are Democrats. I have friends that are Republicans. I have friends that are libertarians. I have friends that are independents. I don't care what your political party or your political leaning is. I could care less. That's your business. and that's your choice. What I do care about is the one thing that we have, and that's our U.S. Constitution. Our U.S. Constitution. This is what we have to be able to protect. Is it perfect? No. Is it time for us to tweak it? Possibly. Constitution of the states. Possibly time for us to go ahead and tweak. I'm just giving you numbers. I'm giving you data, whether you want to agree with it or not. If you have a disagreement with the data I present to you, show me otherwise. If you can show me that what I present to you is wrong, the data that I present to you is wrong, I'll take it in consideration when you give me a good reference, a source. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. I'll make adjustments. But my concern, people say, well, what can we do about it? I don't know how many of you have heard of the Carter-Baker Commission. But as I mentioned to you, this is not a 2020 thing. With our concerns about elections and election integrity, this goes beyond 2020. It's been going on for a long time, for years. This is before Trump, before Biden. Of course, Biden's been around quite a while, but it's not about those individuals. It's about our system of American government and protecting our way of life. People look and say, well, how can we deal with this? It's been addressed before. It's been addressed before. How has it been addressed? With the Carter-Baker Commission. Many of you are familiar with former Democrat President Jimmy Carter. There's also a gentleman who was the former Secretary of State. Jimmy Carter, remember, was a Democrat. Still is a Democrat. Former Secretary of State James Baker, a Republican. He was a Republican. And so there was a commission that these gentlemen headed. This was a bipartisan commission because our elections and election integrity was in question. This was 2005. We're talking 15 years ago. The commission came together because what we're seeing today was a challenge 15 years ago. It was obviously a challenge before that as well. But what did they come up with? Keep in mind, this is bipartisan. This wasn't Republican leaning, a Democrat leaning. This is Republican and Democrats coming together with a commission under then President George W. Bush. And they said, what can we do to make sure that voter integrity is in place? Again, this was Republicans and Democrats. Former Democrat president. They came up with 6 major things. Number one, so when people ask, what can we do? We already have the Carter-Baker Commission that's gone forth. We have something, not perfect, and it needs to have some add-ons, but we already have something that's been addressed. There was 87 recommendations that came from this commission, 87. And I want to point out 6 of these things that they called on the states to do. Number one, increase voter ID requirements. Again, this was bipartisan. Increase voter ID requirements. Bipartisan. Bipartisan. Both sides agreed we need to increase voter ID requirements. They also said in this commission report, be leery of mail-in voting and to halt ballot harvesting. We had a lot of ballot harvesting going on. If you don't know what ballot harvesting is, that's when you have a candidate or someone that's working for the candidate to collect ballots and transport them and things of that nature, or you have a third party that's transporting these ballots. And so they're basically saying, if you're not working for the U.S. Postal Service or some official means like that, you shouldn't be touching these ballots. These ballots should have an opportunity to go straight from the hands of the person that's casting it to the post office or to a location where they can be dropped off. So they said, be leery of mail-in voting. Thirdly, they said, maintain voter lists to ensure dead people are promptly removed from them. Again, this is bipartisan. Maintain these voter lists. Maintain them so the dead people can be removed off of them. They even went so far as to say we should have an opportunity for states to be able to know who's crossing state lines and registering in another state. He went so far as to say if you're in a new state, that new state should be able to alert the old state that you've just registered in the new state so that you won't be voting twice in two different states. In addition to that, they were talking about making sure we had an interloop, a way of knowing who is voting in what states, and so you won't have any duplicate votes taking place. They wanted to allow, again, this is a bipartisan commission led by former Democrat President Jimmy Carter and former Republican Secretary of State James Baker. They agreed that election observers should be allowed in to monitor ballot counting. For those just joining, again, it's not about Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Independent, or Green Party. This is about our U.S. Constitution, our way of life, and moving forward to make sure that we protect it. They agreed that we needed to make sure voting machines were working properly. They also wanted to make sure that the media would refrain, and this is only a request because we can't make them do anything, they said, but we're requesting that the media refrain from calling the elections too early and from touting exit polls. Something reasonable, but the media has a right to do it or not. Again, for anyone that watches this and you disagree with me, feel free to present your facts and your reference where you get that stuff from, and I'll discuss it. If you're right, I'll admit it. In closing, I want to talk about some challenges that we have, what's taking place, and what concerns me. Weapons and tactics that are being used against the American people. Sometimes folks don't even know what's taking place. Some may look and say, well, why didn't we hear all this stuff in the courts? I mentioned to you, there were certain things should have gone to the Supreme Court and should have been heard by the Supreme Court. I mentioned to you, Article 2, Section 1 of Clause 2 was violated by Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona. There was a shift of 73 electoral college votes that were in question. That should have gone to the Supreme Court. But what happens when you're concerned about the court of public opinion and you're concerned about what things look like politically, we unfortunately see that many of these courts decided to stand down, didn't want to get involved. Is that right? No. Courts have a job to do, and we have to make sure they uphold their oaths and do the jobs. So what happens if you can never get your complaints before the courts? Details about your complaints can never truly come out where they can make a difference. There were tons of affidavits, which I'll talk about that at another time. There were tons of affidavits from people in multiple states attesting to a lot of the things that I've shared with you, putting their lives on the line, knowing that this would be an offense, punishable by not only fines, but jail time. But if you can never get these people into the courts, this stuff can never be heard. It can never be heard. Another thing I'll point out, right now, what's taking place, unfortunately, what's taking place right now, this day and time, if things are not heard in the courts, it's only going to be heard now in the court of public opinion. As Americans, regardless of your party, we should be concerned that if we have a redress, we have something that we need to take up and bring before the courts, we should be greatly concerned when the courts are more concerned about politics and perception than making sure that these things can be addressed in the halls of justice. So as it stands today, a lot of things that's being talked about, including what I'm doing right now. What I'm sharing with you right now, this is easily considered the court of public opinion and not the halls of justice. I share it because I have the information and I'll be remiss not to share it. And as a citizen, I must share it because I feel obligated to the next generation. Weapons and tactics being used is a manipulation of public opinion through media. War perception is something that's real. There is a subvert effort, subversion that's taking place, or an ignoring of the U.S. Constitution. We see this. There are many cases where the Constitution has simply been ignored. And there's an attack on our constitutional rights. And again, I'm not concerned about your party. As an American, you have your constitutional rights being attacked. Many of you may not even realize it. First Amendment right, your freedom of speech. Anytime you're being silenced or censored, you can consider that an attack on your freedom of speech. Are there outliers for it? Absolutely. But in general, attacks on our freedom of speech is taking place. I've seen it with many of the people that I'm connected with. Yet, there's protection for the freedom of press. In addition to our First Amendment right to assemble, we've seen that First Amendment right being trampled on. The right to assemble, the right to petition the government, redress. We've seen that trampled on. Second Amendment right to bear arms. We've seen that trampled on. The weapons and tactics that people are using now to undermine the Constitution and to slowly chip away at your rights, redefining words and phrases. Why it's important? They can redefine words and phrases. At this point, they can begin to shift your perception. And if they can shift your perception, they can begin to shift the narrative. And if they can shift the narrative, they can begin to slowly navigate away from the Constitution. Even though you know what's written in there, the court of public opinion will uphold the wrong even when they know it's not right. Labeling the opposition. I've been labeled several times. People would push false narratives. I've been labeled. If you label the opposition, I'm just telling you to make you aware, these are some of the tactics that have been used. If you label the opposition long enough, you'll be able to push a false narrative on the opposition. And now all of a sudden, the facts that a person will speak don't matter as much because they've been labeled as something. Words have been used to redefine them. Oh, I hope you're with me. They will mock. This is a weapon that's been used. Mocking and minimizing faith principles. If you're a person of faith, this should be concerning to you. When your faith principles are downplayed and your religion is attacked, right now it's attacked in a modest or mild way. Later on, the attacks will get greater. With your First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, that is, right to assemble, right to petition the government, your Second Amendment rights, freedom of religion, all this stuff will begin. You'll see greater attacks on them. Abuse of technology, use of fear tactics, controlling the many by the few. I don't care what your party is. This should concern you. When you see a few people that are being manipulated by money, Republicans, Democrats, independents, libertarians, Green Party, you say, well, how are the independents? They can sway one way or the other too. When people of any party are being manipulated by money, lobbyists, big businesses, pharmaceutical companies, when they're being manipulated by money, when you have a few people that's controlling the masses, regardless of what the masses may want when it comes down to their votes, because money is manipulating people when they get to Washington. That should concern you. There's a war being waged on perception all the time. That should concern you. When we get to a point where people begin to make facts irrelevant, unless it's in their favor, we should be greatly concerned. My challenge for you all, don't look at what I've said, what I've stated, what I've shared as a personal attack on you. Look at it as something that you should look at more. and consider. Because what I'm sharing is a personal attack on the American people as a whole, on our Constitution, on our future, on our freedoms. This is an attack on the future generation, whereby we may be long gone. But if we want to keep the America we have today and continue to see this America get stronger and greater, then we have to be able to look at this moment. This is a crossroad for us where we have to look and say, this is greater than my political party. This is greater than my political leanings. This is my future and my children's future and their future. If former President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State Baker can come together in 2005 and come up with this Baker report, a bipartisan report on how we can better protect our election systems, why don't we use it? Why isn't it widely implemented? This, again, should be greatly concerning to you, because it is to me. Again, I'm not concerned about a political party. I told the gentleman just the other day, I said, I'm not a part of, just yesterday, as a matter of fact, I'm not a part of a party because of the people. People are flawed. They're messed up all over the place. You got some messed up Republicans, some messed up Democrats, messed up libertarians, independents, etc. People a lot of people flawed. I go off the principle. What does the party stand for? But beyond that, we have to look at our Constitution, because none of that matters if our Constitution is not upheld. None of it matters if we can't uphold our Constitution. None of it matters. If we can't protect our way of life with an instrument that's supposed to guide us, as our founding fathers believed it would, then none of it matters. Again, I just wanted to share just a little information with you. It turned out to be a lot more than I wanted to share, but whether you agree or disagree, if you disagree with it, feel free to give me some alternative facts. If what I believe to be is factual, it's not factual, and you can show me where you get this information from, I don't mind making a correction, because I want to make sure I put out correct information to the people. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing your comments. If I didn't respond to your comments, don't take it personal. I try not to read those comments so I won't get distracted from the main intent of my message and get caught up in the weeds when I'm trying to get you through those same weeds and take you somewhere. Once again, my name is Dr. Tim Wesley. May God bless you. May he be with you. May he bless the great state of Texas, bless the United States of America, and may he bless all the elected leaders to hear his voice when he speaks, regardless of the party, so that we'll all end up better than what we are. God bless you.